The defending champions, the Kansas City Chiefs, are having a very tough time this season, and it was all highlighted in last night's game against the Buffalo Bills, where they lost with a score of 20-17 after a very controversial call against Kadarius Toney. And after a complete Patrick Mahomes meltdown on the sideline and then in the media, there's a lot of people talking about this Kansas City Chiefs team. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about that game against the Buffalo Bills, as well as just the overall team of the Kansas City Chiefs. So if you guys are ready, let's get into it. And as I said earlier, we're going to start off with this Buffalo Bills game because it was a very interesting game. It was yet again another classic battle between two conference foes, and in this game you could tell the Kansas City Chiefs had a very tough time running the ball. On the day, Clyde Edwards-Helaire only had 11 carries and Jerick McKinnon only had 4 carries. Whereas they passed the ball 43 different times, Patrick Mahomes was 25 for 43 for 271 yards and 1 touchdown and 1 interception. And over 50% of his production went to 2 players, Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice. Travis Kelce on the day had 6 catches for 83 yards, whereas Rashee Rice had 7 catches for 72 yards and a touchdown. And I think everything I just said is exactly the problem with the Kansas City Chiefs. They are a team that throws the ball a ton, but only has 2 legitimate targets to get the ball to, and they're also a team that just refuses to run the ball at times. If you take away Travis Kelce and you take away Rashee Rice, who is there to catch the ball? Are we really trusting Kadarius Toney? Are we really trusting Marquez Valdes-Scantling or Mecole Hardman? There are not any good receiving weapons on this team outside of the 2 I mentioned. And the 2 weapons you have is a 30-plus-year-old Travis Kelce and a brand new rookie in Rashee Rice, who is nothing special. And everybody knows this, and everyone's going to blame the receiving core because yes, the receiving core is the big problem. And I'm not here to recreate the wheel or anything like that. That is the main problem for this Kansas City Chiefs team. But what I don't see anybody doing is throwing the blame at Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, the offensive line. Because as bad as the receiving core has been, Patrick Mahomes hasn't been great either. I know there's a correlation between the fact that he's struggling and the receiving core is struggling. I'm not denying that. But for somebody who's supposed to be this MVP quality quarterback who's going to consistently be the best quarterback for every single year he's playing, he's not playing like that right now. He's throwing the ball in harm's way. He's getting himself sacked. He's creating turnovers. Again, I understand his receiving core sucks, his offensive line sucks. I'm not blaming him on this. But what I am saying, there has to be a level of accountability on your MVP level quarterback. Because as bad as everything is around him, he's not elevating them at all. When Tom Brady's best receiver was Julian Edelman and Danny Amendola, he made it work. This Chiefs team has some playmakers. Kadarius Toney with the ball in his hands is deadly. Marquez Valdes-Scantling has down the field range and he has a ton of speed. Rashee Rice is a do-it-all, nice young rookie receiver who can do a lot of good things. And you have Hall of Fame level tight end in Travis Kelce. There are certain things that you can do as a quarterback and as a play caller to get this offense to get going. And sure, this offense is not bottom 5 in the NFL. I'm not trying to exaggerate how bad this offense is. In fact, I'd say the offense is probably a top 15 offense. Is the offense good enough to win a Super Bowl? I'd say so. Why is that? Well, you have a good defense, you have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. But what I'm not about to do is sit here and tell you guys the exact same thing you've been hearing every single day. Blame the receivers, blame the receivers, blame the receivers. No, put some accountability on the rest of this team. Let's now look at Andy Reid. Why are we passing the ball at such a high clip? In case you want to know how much they pass the ball the 7th most in the NFL, whereas they run the ball the 26th at least in the NFL. And yeah, that makes sense. You have Patrick Mahomes. But when you're struggling to pass the ball and struggling with turnovers, you have 3 good running backs. Why don't you do that more? And it's not like this team is an ineffective run team. They average 4.4 yards per rush, which is the 9th highest in the NFL. And even if you don't trust your offensive line to consistently pound the ball over and over again, why not run some simple extensions of the run game? Whether it's a simple dump off to Kadarius Toney with a blocker in front of him, or some creative play calling to get Kadarius Toney or Marquez Valdes-Scantling the ball with some space in front of them, or some effective screens, or some effective bootlegs, play actions. You kind of get my point. And sure, I'm not saying this team doesn't do any of that. They definitely do some of it. In fact, I'd say they do it pretty decent amount. But when you're struggling with turnovers and you're struggling to put up points, I think you need to do more of it. You have to run the ball. You have to find extensions of the run game because that will open up the down the field stuff. Once the team feels a threat underneath, they're going to start bringing that safety up, and that's when you take your shot to Marquez Valdes-Scantling. That's when Travis Kelce has one-on-one coverage. And obviously teams are going to adjust. It's not like clockwork. It's not going to work every single time. Teams understand the Kansas City Chiefs. They understand how much Patrick Mahomes loves to toss the ball down the field. But when you consistently pound the ball on them and make them work underneath, eventually they're going to start pressing guys up. And when they decide to do that, that's when you take your shots downfield. Because right now this Kansas City Chiefs offense just feels super methodical and just kind of a bit lethargic. It almost feels like a hassle to get the ball down the field sometimes. And that's because, again, they don't have the weapons nor the offensive line that can stand up and do these things. And as great as Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Andy Reid are, they have to find ways to become creative again. They have to find ways to move the ball down the field effectively if they want to turn the clock back to where they were last year. Because last year, they didn't really have any great receivers. Their best receiver was Juju Smith-Schuster, arguably. And sure, they had some solid guys here and they're without a couple pieces along the offensive line as well as in the receiving core, but this team at their core is basically the same. It's kind of shocking just how weird this offense has been. And before anyone says that I'm making this offense seem so much worse than it actually is, well, here's a pretty interesting stat for you. This offense has only scored more than 30 points 3 times this year. Do I know how many times the Dallas Cowboys have done that? 9 times. Do you all know how many times this team has scored over 40 points? 1 time. Do you all know how many times the Cowboys have done it? 5 times. And yes, the Dallas Cowboys are a great offensive team, and I'm not trying to compare the two teams, but you kind of get my point. At some point, we have to hold the offense accountable outside of just this receiving core. I will say this though, the offensive line has definitely got their fair share of scrutiny from the media. Mainly the tackles have been pretty bad this year. What I will say is this though, if you're a tackle playing with Patrick Mahomes, I think your job is a tad bit harder. Because when you watch Patrick Mahomes, one tendency that you will find out that he does a lot is he likes to kind of drift back into that pocket very, very far. And if you've ever played offensive tackle, which I'm assuming probably none of you guys have, or maybe 1 or 2 of you guys have, playing offensive tackle is all about holding leverage on your guy. And when a defensive lineman is trying to go around you, oftentimes the tackle is taught to kind of wash them out. But the problem with that is oftentimes Patrick Mahomes is right there and it generates pressure because Patrick Mahomes is in the way of where the offensive tackle is trying to wash them out. When a tackle is trying to wash you out, it means the quarterback needs to step up into that pocket. And while Patrick Mahomes obviously knows this and understands that, sometimes he gets sacked just trying to do too much. That was my small little defense to the offensive line, but granted, it's still not a very good offensive line. Now here's the really, really good news for this Kansas City Chiefs team. You have one of the best defenses in the entire NFL. So even though your offense may not be the same offense of what it used to be, your defense is picking up a ton of the slack. Just imagine how good this Kansas City Chiefs could have been back in like 2020 when they had Tyreek Hill and Kelsey all the way younger and healthy to go along with this defense. That team would have been crazy. But now they have an older Travis Kelsey to go along with a bad offensive line and a bad receiving core with this phenomenal defense. It kind of sucks that it might get wasted because defensively they only give up 17.5 points per game, which is the 3rd lowest in the NFL. They give up only 299.9 yards per game, which is the 6th lowest in the NFL. They also only give up 2 touchdowns per game, which is the 8th lowest in the NFL. And it's kind of pick your poison on this defense. If you want to run the ball, go right ahead. They can stuff the run just as good as any other team out there. And if you want to pass the ball, go right ahead. They're going to pick you off. They're going to sack you. They're going to do all the things you can't afford to give up as an offense. So defensively speaking, this team is super damn good. And I think moving forward, that's going to be what they rely on to get to that Super Bowl run where they want to be. I just think that if this team genuinely wants to make that Super Bowl run, they're going to have to rely on the offense doing just enough to win the game. Because right now, this is a Super Bowl level defense. It's just not a Super Bowl level offense, which is just baffling to say when you have Andy Reid, Travis Kelsey, and Patrick Mahomes. And I think a big highlight player that a lot of people need to give a lot more respect to, Trent McDuffie. The dude is a stud. Also give credit to guys like Chris Jones, of course. George Karlaftis is playing a really good season this year. Not to mention they're getting a ton of production from their safeties and linebacking cores. They've done a very good job of drafting these defensive guys and just kind of going out there in free agency to pick up a player here and there to really generate a very good defense. And I think if you are a Chiefs fan, that is probably the most exciting thing about this team right now. The fact that your offense hasn't been as dominant as it usually is, but you're still 8-5. And more than likely, you're going to carry this team to over 12 wins. Now here is kind of my big conclusion for this whole thing. Is this team still contenders? 1000%. I understand right now they're kind of going through a bit of a skid. They just lost to the Packers, they just lost to the Eagles, they just lost to the Bills, they struggled with the Raiders for a long time. But as I've said a couple times this video, you have Mahomes, you have Kelsey, you have Andy Reid, you have a spectacular defense. You should be fine. Are they the Dallas Cowboys or the San Francisco 49ers or the Baltimore Ravens? No, they're not. They play such a different brand of football. But can this Chiefs team go out there and beat them? Probably, I think so. Now the last thing I want to quickly address before I end off this video is that Patrick Mahomes rant that happened in the media last night. And I have a lot to say about it, but to be honest with you, it really did bother me. Because at the end of the day, the ref is doing his job. He made the right call. There is no reason why Patrick Mahomes had to go on such a tirade after that game and blatantly in front of America criticize that ref for doing the right thing. Should the foul have been called? 1000%. He was offsides. It has to be called. Did it impact the game? Not really. The play honestly would have ran the exact same way if he was 1 inch behind that line. But at the end of the day, the rules are the rules, and if you think as the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes that you are above the law, quote unquote, you're not. Because at the end of the day, they've gotten away with their fair share of fouls too. I just don't like the fact that your face of the franchise, Patrick Mahomes, and your head coach and all the guys in this team went out there to the media and complained about it. The other thing that kind of caught me off guard too was him going to Josh Allen to complain about that foul. Do you really think Josh Allen gives a damn? If I was Josh Allen, I would kind of laugh at him because that's crazy. To me, it says one thing. This team is not used to losing. Are they spoiled with winning? 1000%. I'm not saying these professional athletes are children and for acting like this, but in a sense, yes, they are spoiled with winning. Patrick Mahomes has never had a big time losing season in the NFL. This is kind of his first time dealing with scrutiny and being a struggling offense. And to give credit to him, he's kept it level-headed the entire season. And I can understand him being mad, but at the end of the day, the foul was the correct call, and you have to stay level-headed in that situation. To throw your helmet on the sideline, to complain to Josh Allen, and then after the game is over, when you've had time to cool down, you go to the media to make a point about it. When the ref was calling the right call? I just don't get it. I understand emotions are running high in that situation, and I would be upset too if I was in his shoes. But as the guy in this league who is the cover of every single magazine, you can't be doing that. You are not only the face of the Kansas City Chiefs, but you're also the face of the entire NFL. So for him to do that, I'm pretty sure Roger Goodell was not very happy. But you guys let me know in the comment section below what you guys thought about this Kansas City Chiefs loss and just kind of their overall season thus far. Do you guys think they could win a championship? Because I still think they can. And if you did enjoy the video, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button because that would help me out a ton. But I love you guys. Peace.